Removing and replacing parts. HP Z1G2 Workstation.
Tools you need. To remove and replace parts in this device, you should ideally have the following tools on hand. An anti-static wrist strap, a Phillips screwdriver, a flat-bladed pry tool, long-nose pliers, a flathead screwdriver, a torque screwdriver, a triangular pry tool, a pair of tweezers, thermal grease and cleaning alcohol, a suction cup, a cuticle stick, a SIM tray eject pin.
How to access the computer. Removal.
Lower the workstation and rotate it back to the horizontal position. Pull out on both latches and rotate the display enclosure up until it's fully open.
Replacement.
Rotate the display enclosure down and press until it locks. Ensure the workstation is completely lowered and that the latch in the stand is unloaded by pushing down on the edges of the display. Grasp the bottom and top edge of the workstation and then push the green button. Raise the workstation to its maximum horizontal height. Make any necessary connections to the rear I/O panel. Rotate the display to the desired height and angle.
How to replace the 3.5-inch hard drive. Removal.
Open the computer. Pull up on the hard drive carrier handle and rotate it back until the drive is disconnected. Lift the hard drive carrier straight up and out of the drive bay. Flex the rail on one side of the drive carrier until the pins clear the drive screw holes, and then push the hard drive up. Pull the drive away from the pins on the opposite rail and remove the hard drive.
Replacement.
With the front of the drive toward the front of the drive carrier, insert the pins on one drive carrier rail into the screw holes on the hard drive. Flex the opposite rail and insert the pins into the drive screw holes. Align the guide pins on the drive carrier with the J slots in the drive bay and lower the drive carrier into the bay. Rotate the drive carrier handle down until the hard drive is fully seated on the connectors in the bay.
How to replace the 2.5-inch hard drive. Removal.
Open the computer. Note: in a dual hard drive configuration, this procedure applies to both drives. Pull up on the hard drive carrier handle and rotate it back until the drive is disconnected. Lift the hard drive carrier straight up and out of the drive bay. Flex the rail on one side of the drive carrier until the pins clear the drive screw holes, and then push the hard drive up. Pull the drive away from the pins on the opposite rail and remove the hard drive.
Replacement.
With the front of the drive toward the front of the drive carrier, insert the pins on one drive carrier rail into the screw holes on the hard drive. Flex the opposite rail and insert the pins into the drive screw holes. Align the guide pins on the drive carrier with the J slots in the drive bay and lower the drive carrier into the bay. Rotate the drive carrier handle down until the hard drive is fully seated on the connectors in the bay.
How to replace the memory optical drive fan. Removal.
Open the computer. Pull back on the release latch and rotate the fan assembly up. Pull the assembly out of the slots on the hard drive cage and remove.
Replacement.
Insert the tabs on the fan assembly into the slots in the hard drive cage. Rotate the assembly down and push until it snaps into place.
How to replace the hard drive cage. Removal.
Open the computer and remove the hard drive and memory optical drive fan. Disconnect the SATA power cable from the system board. Disconnect the SATA data cables from the system board. Remove the SATA data cables from the clips on the base pan. Push the retaining clips on the HDD1 thermal sensor to release and remove it from the opening in the hard drive cage. Push the retaining clips on the HDD0 thermal sensor to release and remove it from the opening in the hard drive cage. Remove the 4 Torx T15 screws that secure the hard drive cage to the base pan. Lift and remove the hard drive cage.
Replacement.
Position the hard drive cage on the base pan and align the screw holes. Replace the 4 Torx T15 screws that secure the hard drive cage to the base pan. Thread the heat sensor cables through the opening in the back of the hard drive cage. Align the HDD0 thermal sensor with the lower opening in the hard drive cage and push until it snaps into place. Align the HDD1 thermal sensor with the upper opening in the hard drive cage and push until it snaps into place. Replace the SATA data cables into the clips on the base pan. Connect the SATA 1 data cable to the SATA 1 connector on the system board. Connect the SATA 0 data cable to the SATA 0 connector on the system board. Connect the SATA power cable to the system board.
How to replace the memory. Removal.
Open the computer. Push down and out on the memory socket latches to release the memory module. Pull the memory module up and out of the socket.
Replacement.
Ensure that the memory socket latches are pushed down and away from the memory socket. Match the notch on the memory module with a key in the memory socket. Push the module down firmly into the socket until the latches snap into place and the module is fully seated.
How to replace the WLAN Mini PCIe card. Removal.
Open the computer. Disconnect the antenna cables from the wireless LAN card with a small needle nose pliers or tweezers. Remove the 2 Phillips head P00 screws that secure the card to the metal bracket and allow it to release to the spring tension position. Grasp the card by the edges and pull gently to remove it.
Replacement.
Match the notch on the wireless LAN card with the key in the socket and gently push the card into place. Press the card down and replace the 2 screws. Connect the black wireless LAN antenna cable to the main connector on the card. Connect the gray Bluetooth antenna cable to the auxiliary connector on the card.
How to replace the mSATA card. Removal.
Open the computer. Remove the 2 Phillips head P00 screws that secure the card to the base enclosure and allow it to release to the spring tension position. Grasp the card by the edges and pull gently to remove it.
Replacement.
Match the notch on the card with the key in the socket and gently push the card into place. Press the card down and replace the 2 screws.
How to replace the optical drive. Removal.
Open the computer. Disconnect the data power cable from the optical drive. Press the latch and slide the optical drive out of the drive cage.
Replacement.
Slide the optical drive into the drive cage until the latch snaps into place. Connect the ODD data power cable to the optical drive.
How to replace the optical drive cage. Removal.
Open the computer and remove the optical drive. Pull on the optical drive cage release latch. Pull the drive cage back slightly and remove it from the chassis.
Replacement.
Align the hooks on the bottom of the optical drive cage with the slots in the base enclosure. Press down and push the drive cage forward until it locks into place.
How to replace the Thunderbolt module. Removal.
Open the computer. Peel back the adhesive tab that secures the Thunderbolt power cable to the module. Pull the cable back slightly to disconnect it from the module. Grasp the Mylar tabs and pull straight up to disconnect the Thunderbolt DisplayPort and PCIe cables from the module. Press the latch and slide the module out of the optical drive cage.
Replacement.
Slide the module into the drive cage until the latch snaps into place. Position the Thunderbolt PCIe and DisplayPort cables over their connectors and press them into place. Slide the Thunderbolt power cable into its connector and secure it with the adhesive tab.
How to replace the OR-TC battery. Removal.
Open the computer and remove the optical drive and optical drive cage. Press the retaining clip with a flat-bladed tool to release the battery. Lift the battery out of the socket.
Replacement.
Press the battery into the socket with the plus sign facing up.
How to replace the wireless antenna. Removal.
Open the computer. Disconnect the black antenna cable from the main connector on the Wireless LAN Mini PCI combo card with a small needle nose pliers or tweezers. Note: if you are removing the auxiliary antenna, disconnect the gray antenna cable from the aux connector on the card. Remove the antenna cable from the routing clip. Remove the two Torx T15 screws that secure the wireless LAN antenna to the base enclosure. Lift the wireless LAN antenna and remove.
Replacement.
With the metal tab pointing up, align the screw holes on the antenna board with the holes in the base enclosure and replace the two Torx T15 screws. Replace the antenna cable into its routing clip. Connect the black antenna cable to the main connector on the Wireless LAN Mini PCI combo card. Note: if you are replacing the auxiliary antenna, connect the gray antenna cable to the aux connector on the card.
How to replace the GPU module. Removal.
Open the computer. Pull back on the release latch to disengage from the slots in the module compartment. Tilt the module up and pull it away from the connectors on the system board to remove.
Replacement.
Tow the module into the connectors on the system board and push until it is fully seated. Push the left side of the module down until it snaps into place.
How to replace the power supply. Removal.
Open the computer. Press the release latch and rotate the handle down to disengage the power supply from the slots in the base pan. Lift the back of the power supply and disconnect the AC power cable. Lift the power supply and disconnect the main power cable. Remove the power supply.
Replacement.
Connect the power supply to the main power cable. Connect the AC power cable to the back of the power supply. With the handle in the down position, position the power supply in the base enclosure so that the front edge touches the handle slots. Pull the handle up to engage the power supply with the slots in the base pan. Important: ensure that the power supply sits flat on the base pan with the back edge resting against the metal stop tab.
How to replace the side I/O board. Removal.
Open the computer and remove the memory optical drive fan. Remove the 3 Torx T15 screws that secure the side I/O board to the base enclosure. Pull up on the back edge of the board to disconnect it from the system board. Gently rock the board back to pull the I/O ports out of the slots in the base enclosure. Remove the side I/O board.
Replacement.
Hold the side I/O board at a slight angle and push the I/O ports into the slots in the base enclosure. Press the back edge of the board onto the connector on the system board until it is fully seated. Replace the 3 Torx T15 screws that secure the side I/O board to the base enclosure.
How to replace the rear I/O board. Removal.
Open the computer. Disconnect the DisplayPort LAN cable from the rear I/O board. Remove the 3 Torx T15 screws that secure the board to the base enclosure. Lift the board and disconnect the USB audio cable. Remove the rear I/O board.
Replacement.
Connect the USB audio cable to the board. Align the board with the mounting holes on the base enclosure and replace the screws. Connect the DisplayPort LAN cable to the board.
How to replace the AC power connector. Removal.
Open the computer and remove the GPU module. Disconnect the AC power connector cable from the power supply and pull it out from the space between the metal partition and the left speaker. Remove the Torx T15 screw that secures the AC power connector to the base pan. Remove the 3 Torx T15 screws that secure the rear I/O board to the base enclosure. Pull the rear I/O board up and away from the mounting posts. Lift and remove the AC power connector.
Replacement.
Place the AC power connector into the opening in the I/O panel and align the screw holes with the holes in the base pan and mounting post. Place the rear I/O board onto the mounting posts and replace the screws. Replace the screw that secures the AC power connector to the base pan. Route the AC power connector cable into the space between the metal partition and left speaker. Connect the AC power connector cable to the power supply.
How to replace the stand. Removal.
Lay the computer screen side down on a soft, non-abrasive surface, such as a towel. Pull up on the corners of the hinge cover nearest the top of the computer to partially release it. Pull up on the corners near the hinge, and then lift and pull back to remove the hinge cover. Remove the 4 Torx T15 screws that secure the stand to the back of the computer. Lift and remove the stand.
Replacement.
Place the stand on the back of the computer and align the screw holes. Replace the 4 Torx T15 screws. Slide the tabs on the hinge cover under the plastic trim on the hinge. Press down on the sides of the hinge cover until it snaps into place.
Find more helpful videos on our HP Support YouTube channel.